5? What do you think, 5 minutes? Oh, let's do this here. You want to do the thing down how you want it?
Oh, it's for talking?
Just for not talking. For you? Yeah, for the, I'm going to do the, you know. Are you doing that right away? In 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Shall I give them a warning?
We're going to go 1 more minute.
Shall I give them a warning?
Sure.
Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Assembly. Find yourselves a seat because we have a special thing that will start this event today, and you don't want to miss it. And if you're not sitting, you will miss it because it's going to go zooming fast like that.
TMS, go. Range, go. FSO. Light safety. Light safety, go. OD, go. CRF, go. Minus 40 seconds. CRF, verify system 1 and 2 receiver test lamps are not lighted. Verified. CVH, firing line ready, switch on and verify lamps are lighted. Firing line ready now, lamps lighted. Lift timer starts, switch guard. Lifted. Minus 25 seconds. 20, 19, 18, 17, mark. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, zip.
And blast off for the 49th ever Sunday Assembly in San Diego. Thank you so much for being here. We're so glad to have you. Just before we get started, I want to make sure you know we are digitally recording this event, and so if you do not want to participate in that, we have a media-free zone over in this area. And what better way in the middle of spring, right smack dab in the middle of April, than to have Mr. Paul Svensson sing a lovely song that he both composed and will be performing. Mr. Paul Svensson.
Let's all stand up if you feel like it. Of course, the rules are if you don't feel like standing up and I ask you to, don't. You know, just do what you want to do. That's fine. I'm always for a little anarchy here at the sing-along time. So, some of you are new and don't know this song, so I'm going to assume that none of us know it, and we'll just learn it together. It goes like this. Welcome to Sunday Assembly. I look round the room and must say, to familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. Here's your part. We're glad that you came here today. We're glad that you came here today. To familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. Okay, back that up, please, Laura. Okay, you got it? Now, when you do the day, if you look up and kind of hold your hand up, you go, day. It really works better. You know, I mean, you don't have to go all Annie about it, but, you know, something like that. Here we go. Oh, welcome to Sunday Assembly. I look round the room and must say, to familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. Here we go. We're glad that you came here today. We're glad that you came today. I like that enthusiasm. Familiar old faces and new ones, we're glad that you came here today. And when the assembly is over, we hope that you don't have to run. We'd really like to get to know you, so stick around after we're done. Come on now. Oh, stick around after we're done. Oh, stick around after we're done. We'd really like to get to know you, so stick around after we're done. We like to sing songs when we gather, so rock, pop, and ballads we croon. We raise up our voices in verses, and sometimes we sing them in tune. Oh, sometimes we sing them in tune. Sometimes we sing them in tune. We raise up our voices in verses, and sometimes we sing them in tune. And when we're all done with the program, and after we sing the last song, introduce yourselves to one another, and you won't be a stranger for long. No, you won't be a stranger for long. You won't be a stranger for long. Introduce yourselves to one another, and you won't be a stranger for long. Now, I'm just going to strum for a moment. And in the next 10 seconds, turn around and say hi to somebody you don't know. Go. Here we go now. So welcome to Sunday Assembly. We greet you with wide open door. We're certainly glad that you joined us to live better, help often, wonder more. To live better, help often, wonder more. Live better, help often, wonder more. Certainly glad that you joined us to live better, help often, wonder more.
Paul, that is a fantastic song. I love that so much. Thank you. Well, welcome to Sunday Assembly. Sunday Assembly is a radically inclusive secular community that meets monthly to hear great talks, to sing silly songs, to connect for community events, and to have snacks at the end. Every Sunday Assembly has a theme, and the theme for this Sunday Assembly is cannabis. So the snacks after are brownies, of course. We had to do that. But mostly, we meet to celebrate together this one life that we know that we have. Now, how many of you here, by show of hands, it's your first time with Sunday Assembly? Well, thank you for coming. Give those people a high five. So glad to have you here, Robert. Thank you. So glad to have you here. Well, we start out, just before we get too far along, I want to let you know that we do have child care. We have some professional people that are watching your children age 1.5 and up. So if nothing else, if you just want to come and have an hour off from the kids, I'm a parent and know how that could be, please bring the kids. And then also we have a new teen program, which there's a breakout session for that. And I'm sorry, Alicia, can you tell me when is that happening? What part of the assembly do we break the kids out, do you know? For the teens if they want to go? Right after the speaker, right? So we'll do that right after the speaker, so you're welcome to do that. So we do this thing at Sunday Assembly called Life Happens, and this is just us catching up with each other and letting us know what's going on in our lives, and we have some really great ones today. So I'm going to start this one. This is from Claudia. Claudia said her mother in Germany fell down in her garden. Hours later, she made it to the kitchen door to alert my father. They refused medical treatment until after my brother insisted on it, and he had just called by coincidence and driven by from southern Bavaria in 4 hours. And she received an emergency hip replacement after her house doctor made an early morning house call to her parents' house and called the ambulance to have her committed. She is now recuperating and doing physical therapy. I'm so glad. Boy, that's what's happened. That's a scary situation. I'm glad your mother's doing okay. Diane's news, the stitches are out as of Thursday and she's healing nicely. The bad news is that scar is on the cheek and she needs to keep it out of the sun for a year. Good news is basal cell carcinoma caught early and hard to ignore on cheek. Doctor's advice, avoid the sun or use sunscreen. So there's advice for everybody. So, we also have a happy 65th anniversary birthday to anniversary of his birth, Mr. Paul Svensson. That was last Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is another day in April. We also want to make a hearty thank you to Mr. Aaron Beaglebach, who fixed our projector right here. So he actually got a lamp and fixed that on our nose. So for $35, was able to fix it, and we won't even mention that Aaron's the one that dropped the projector. Good job, Aaron. Thanks for nice recuperation. And here we are again with the projector. I finally got accepted into a certification program I applied for back in October. After April 27, 2018, Amber, will be a certified peer family support specialist. Congratulations, Amber. Hey, it's Suzanne Morgan's birthday today. And from Leah got into grad school. Congratulations. That is just great. And Ms. Lynn Warner, I'm going to be providing lectures to two undergraduate classes at the University of San Diego tomorrow. I'm excited to be returning to the classroom, even if it's just for a day. Congratulations, Lynn, where are you? Fantastic. And I'm sorry, I don't know who this is, so if you want to identify yourself, that's great. And if you don't, that's great too. I got a personal best time for my half marathon yesterday. I was finally able to break 2 hours for the first time. Who is that? Well, congratulations. That is awesome. And then, gosh, it's so great to be able to check in with each other and just to see you all here today. We have a lot of things to do here this month. Just this next Tuesday is Beer Tuesday. We have our Earth Day event happening. We'll talk about that in the announcements, but there's just a lot of ways to connect right now. We do a thing called Help Happens. I believe that's Alexis. You're going to come up and help me with that one, I think, possibly. And yes, so excited.
Hi, everyone. So part of our motto is help often. The other parts are live better and wonder more. Help often is what gets us out the door and into our communities. And so many of us are doing so many things that aren't even a part of Help Happens, but if you hashtag us and ask us to join you, we will. We're always looking for new opportunities. Right now we have feeding the homeless, and that includes giving them blankets and warm things. I know it's been really hot this week, but it's still nice to have some blankets for at nighttime, even just for comfort. Sometimes like the weight is what we're told is like comforting. New socks. Anytime you come to assembly, if you see me laden with bags of random toothbrushes, it's not because I have a problem orally. It's usually I'll take them for you. We also have our harvest crops that's not usually in our program. So if you are interested in joining us to pick fruit off private properties just to supply food banks, because food banks get canned donations, they don't often get fresh fruit and vegetables. And I have volunteered at a food distribution center where little kids come up and got a fresh apple and it makes their day. Like, this is hugely important. It's something you wouldn't think about for a food bank, but fresh fruit is huge. But we do need to pick it off the trees. So those, we usually don't get a lot of time. They schedule them like a week before, 2 weeks before. So if you want to grab me after assembly and just say, hey, I'd love to pick fruit, I want to be kept in mind, I might not see an announcement on Facebook, but just text me or something, then we can set those up because they kind of happen quickly. Anything else, any ideas you have, open up your brochures, bulletins, what are they called? Programs. And put it in the comments card. Give us your advice on the assembly. Give us your advice on things you want to see us do as a secular community to make our world a better place and help often.
All right, we have a reading today, and a bunch of stuff on the ground here. Darn gravity. This earth we live on, I'll tell you. Our reader today is Andrew. He'll be reading out of Anne poem number 7 from Sarah Eddy.
Why shouldn't I stand like the blue heron, intent at the edge of the pond? My toes stuck in the muck, my eyes meant for one thing. Why shouldn't the swallows describe a new geometry in my periphery, while they dive and dance for scuttled surface bugs? Why not feel in my bones the gentle clatter of turtles knocking into each other as they play or fight or flirt? Who knows their inscrutable design? Why not focus my brain down to one sliver of meaning and stretch forward toward that meaning? My long neck extended, my body bent forward, then my whole self whiplashing at that goal. The fish in my throat would be like the silver, like truth, like an answer.
Audio professional at work here. That's your line? Yeah, stole that. For the first time in the history of Sunday Assembly, we're going to have 2 people speaking. So here on our 49th Assembly, it's a rather auspicious occasion. We have both local licensed purveyors of medical cannabis. To go with our theme today, Virginia Falces, the company's Director of Policy and Community Relations, is a graduate of University of California at Berkeley with a journalism and nonprofit background. And Dr. Markus Roggen with a PhD in organic chemistry from ETH Zurich in Switzerland is their Vice President of Extraction. We're so pleased to have you both here. Welcome, please, Virginia Falces and Dr. Markus Roggen.
Just swapping projectors here. Stand by, please. Please stand by. An audio-video professional will be with you in just a moment. There we go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here today. Really excited to share what we do with you. Being very mindful of last week's presentation that perhaps went a little long, I'm going to be rushing through some of my slides. I'm going to be talking about the history of cannabis, both its use throughout the ancient and modern world, and the history of criminalization and now decriminalization. And then Markus is going to deep dive into some science, which he does really well. So, So as you can see, cannabis, the first recorded use of cannabis, the earliest evidence of use is from 3000 BC, seeds found in a ceremonial funeral cup in Romania. And going forward in 2000, I can't read with these, 2900 BC, the first recorded use, written recorded use of cannabis or reference is from the Chinese, the word ma, and the ideogram there is a depiction of the plant drying in a shed. And we can see going forward, this is the modern ideogram. Hasn't really changed much. And going forward, the use throughout history, Egypt, India, Iran, Greece, used for treating glaucoma, inflammation, as an anesthetic, and my own personal favorite, from the ancient Greece to, from China to treat absent-mindedness. It's not really what you associate cannabis use with, is it? This drawing here is a picture of the plant from a Roman medical guide, De Medica. Oh, sorry guys, I'm really cutting this a little bit short. From De Materia Medica, written by Pliny the Elder in 70 AD. And it's the first reference of the plant as both having male and female characteristics, and used for making rope, treating earaches, and of course another personal favorite, to suppress sexual longing. Again, one of the only references that we see like that. Moving forward, in China, used as an anesthetic to treat migraines, syphilis, as an analgesic. And then a very interesting, I'm really flipping forward here, to the 1600s. From excavations of Shakespeare's garden in Avon, there were 24 pipe fragments found. 8 of them contained traces of cannabis, and only 1 found tobacco. Yeah. Everyone knows, I mean, we've all heard from our history classes, or well, maybe not history classes, but talking about it, what's wrong with cannabis? George Washington grew it, right? Well, yes, Washington and Jefferson both grew it, but it was brought to the New World very early on. Jamestown, the colonists of Jamestown brought cannabis to the New World, and it was actually required that they grow it. And you were fined if you did not grow the plant, because they needed it for material. It was, you know, in the rope, for creating rope, and they also used it as animal feed. And you can see a couple other interesting uses as a treatment for depression. I think we could all agree with that one. Queen Victoria used it to treat menstrual cramps. And the last thing there in the Lancet, now that's the same Lancet from today, cites cannabis treatment as a, for opium withdrawal, which certainly has a lot of, we can draw very big parallels to that for today with the opioid epidemic in this country, and Markus will talk about that a little bit more later. And also as an antiemetic. As personally, as someone who I suffered from horrible, horrible morning sickness with both of my pregnancies, a condition called hyperemesis. It happens to less than 1% of people. And I tried every medication that existed, and with no success at all. I was debilitating nausea in the hospital with both pregnancies. Aiden here is very lucky that he exists because he's my second child. It took 11 years to have another one. Had I but known, I certainly would have treated, and I did not. So, so what changed? Throughout history, we've been, throughout the ancient world, Europe, everyone's using cannabis to treat a variety of diseases and ailments. What happened? How did we get to where we were for the last 40 years? So, like with any social change, it happened gradually. The first thing that happened in 1906, President Roosevelt signed the Pure Food and Drug Act, which was the first thing that required that medications actually list all the ingredients on the label. And as you can see from this tincture here, it was used for curing the common cold. Probably didn't cure it, but it did contain 1/4 gram of cannabis indica. And it didn't, now this act did not outlaw cannabis or restrict its use in any way, but it is the first time that it was actually put on labels. And you can see in this country we were using, cannabis was being sold legally in the early 1900s. Soon after that, in the teens, states began to outlaw cannabis. The first state to outlaw it was Massachusetts in 1911. By the end of 1917, 7 more states had outlawed the use, and it kind of snowballed from there. It was not federally outlawed at that point in any way. In 1915, Wilson signs the Harrison Act to control the opium trade. Again, there is no mention in this act at all of cannabis, not a word. It's not intended to do that, but it did lay the groundwork for what became the Federal Narcotics Act and did begin to control cannabis. 1918 saw a real limitation to the access for cannabis in the New World. At that point in time, most of the cannabis had come from India and Madagascar. Because of the war, there was shipping was interrupted, and we began to grow it here in the United States. By the end of 1918, we were growing 60,000 pounds of cannabis a year in the United States, east of the Mississippi. Again, completely legal, not prohibited at all. You can see here in the 1930s, still completely legal. There are no restrictions against the sale or manufacturing of cannabis. That bottle right there is, you can see at the bottom, Park Davis. Park Davis and Eli Lilly were both selling tinctures that contained cannabis for the treatment of pain, earaches, sedatives, and as an antispasmodic. And today that is one of the most common and successful uses of cannabis is for treating seizure disorder. And I think, Markus, will you talk on that a little bit later? Yep. Now, so 1930s, what's going on? So let's put it in a little bit of historical perspective. 1920 to 1933. Everybody knows what years those were? Prohibition, exactly. So towards the end of that era, in 1930, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created. The first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was Henry J. Anslinger. Anslinger became the commissioner of this bureau in 1930. Those were the years Prohibition was waning. There was a lot of, the writing was on the wall, and those laws were coming to an end. And he was very concerned personally about what was going to happen with his department and how were they going to justify the size of this department when the only thing they were controlling was opium and cocaine. So he started a personal campaign to expand the scope of the department to include all drugs. And armed with absolutely no scientific evidence and just a few sensationalist news stories from the 1920s, he started this campaign. And some of his most famous quotes are here. "Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind." Yeah, pretty much. How many violent potheads do you know? You smoke a joint and you're likely to kill your brother. Kind of amazing that either of my brothers made it to adulthood. Marijuana leads to passivism and communist brainwashing. Well, the passivism part might be right, but I don't know about the communist brainwashing. And finally, the real kicker, and this is you were interested in, reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men. And that's when the campaign began to marginalize cannabis and really turn it into something that was, the campaign was extremely racist in nature. At that point in time, the plant had really been only referred to by its scientific name, cannabis indica, cannabis sativa, or hemp. And Anslinger, and as you'll see on the next slide, everyone's favorite industrialist, William Randolph Hearst, began a campaign to turn it into a racist issue. And they chose to use the term marijuana because it was associated with Mexicans, and people were afraid of the immigrant population that was coming into the middle of the country. And sound familiar to today? Kind of scary, isn't it? So, at that point in time, Hearst controlled over 28 newspapers in the West and controlled every major newspaper on the border of the country. And he began a campaign where to just, really turn the tide here. Interestingly, he wasn't personally against the use of the product, but he did control the lumber and paper industry and saw hemp as a threat to his economic interest in both of those. And that is very much how we came to what happened over the next few years. He was extremely powerful, as you all know. By the end of 1936, 3 years into Hearst's campaign, all 48 states had a law on the book for regulating cannabis. And also, concurrently, the development of aspirin, morphine, and other opiate derivatives began to reduce the use of cannabis as a painkiller anyway. So it was kind of a perfect storm of two things happening at the same time. Around that time, a film came out called Tell Your Children. This was a film that was financed by a small church group. It was purchased by a man named Dwayne Esper, who changed the title to Reefer Madness. Some of you may have seen this movie or have heard about it. You've seen it? Yep. And it's still around today. You can Google it, watch it on YouTube. It's a really interesting show. They added a lot of salacious content to it. And here you can see this is the actual promotional poster for that movie. Women cry for it, men die for it. Reefer madness, drug-crazed abandon, and I like this one, youthful marijuana victims. What actually happens, they're neither youthful or victims, but I suppose that was beside the point. And I really like the Dracula-themed drawing up at the top, too. Here's another one. A vicious racket with its arms around your children. It leads to debauchery, sin, degradation, insanity, vice. The truth about marijuana, the devil's harvest. And I'm going to go back one minute because I did forget to talk about this one. This was a political cartoon that ran in the Messenger, a newspaper in Valparaiso, Indiana. And you can see a marijuana smoker. The hat says Latin America. And the sign on the side says Nazi propaganda. So somehow we just threw that all together. Mexicans, Nazi propaganda, yeah, everything everybody feared in America. So that was 1936. By 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act is being debated in Congress from April 27th to May 4th. The hearings were held in front of the Ways and Means Committee. The last person to testify was Dr. William C. Woodward, who was the legislative counsel for the AMA at the time. He announced his opposition to the bill, as well as the organization's opposition to the bill, and said that there was no enlightened medical opinion that could sponsor this legislation. And both of the quotes on the side are from him. I won't read through them all. He does talk about the fact that you should be using the word cannabis and not marijuana, that it was a pejorative term that had no relation to the product or the plant itself. And the second one talks about how we've lost sight of the effects of the plant, and that further investigation is needed and further research is needed to actually know whether cannabis is medically beneficial and exactly how it's medically beneficial. And sadly, you'll see when Markus is talking that that is exactly where we still are today. So, the act passes. Everyone who cultivates, sells, or consumes cannabis is now taxed and has to register. This gentleman here, Samuel R. Caldwell, has the distinction of being the first person to have been convicted of a marijuana or cannabis-related crime. He was arrested in New York City for selling cannabis. He received a 4-year prison sentence to hard labor and served every day of that sentence. He died within a year of being released from prison. The person he sold to was also arrested and received an 18-month prison sentence and served every day of that too. 1938, Canada prohibits cultivation. The 1942, cannabis is removed from the pharmacopoeia. And we move, oh my gosh, I am so going over, I am so sorry. I'm doing exactly what they did last week. So decriminalization begins. I'm going to go very quickly through this because most of you know this. 1970, Congress passes the Controlled Substance Act, saying that cannabis has absolutely no medicinal use. I think we can all agree that there was plenty of evidence to say that wasn't the case. It is classified as a Schedule I substance. It still is today. A Schedule I substance means there is no medicinal benefit to the product and that it is lethal and addictive. Cannabis is neither of those things. Interestingly enough, there are 2 items that fulfill all 3 of those requirements. Both are exempted by an act of Congress from the scheduling system. Can you guess what they are? Exactly. Alcohol and tobacco. They have both been exempted since 1937 and still are today. Decriminalization continues. Randall is the first person who sues the government for the right to use cannabis to treat a medical condition. He had glaucoma. He won and became the first person to legally be able to use cannabis in the United States. Oh, at the same time this is going on, the Reagan administration passes the 3 Strikes Law, which has a disproportionate effect on minorities and the disenfranchised. Decriminalization continues very slowly through the years. And we all know California became the first state to legalize medicinal marijuana in 1996 with Proposition 215. Many, many states followed after that. In 2012, Colorado and Washington became the first states to allow adult use marijuana or cannabis, and we all know that California became the 5th state in 2016. And this is the map today. There are 8 states plus the District of Columbia that allow adult use, and a total of 29 states that allow medicinal use. And over half of the US population now lives in a state where they do have access to cannabis. And I'm going to turn it over to Markus now for a dive into the science.
Okay. Luckily, you don't have to lift it through much chemistry because I don't have time. Okay, so we all know THC and CBD. These are the two molecules everyone is interested in. Actually, there are some other groups of molecules, and we end up with over 140 more cannabinoids that are already known. Then we have 200 terpenes, at least 30 flavonoids, and then other groups, other metabolites that are of interest. So the THC and CBD gives you healing is not correct. We just don't know what the other molecules do. Actually, we have one case in our dispensary. We have a 35-year-old epileptic patient that was 3 months seizure-free from our tinctures. When we changed the strain or the plant we extracted for the oil of the tincture, he had seizures directly again. So we switched him back to the old oil and he was seizure-free. THC and CBD were both present in the tincture. It's one of the minor cannabinoids, but there are 144. We can only test for 10 right now, so we don't really know what is going on. But just as an example, cannabis is not cannabis. Like, you can't say, well, it just heals everything. Just a quick background here. Cannabis has a biosynthetic route like all other molecules. We start with a terpene and a sugar. We have CBG acid. Hello? Yeah. CBG acid is the first cannabinoid, and then from there downstream we see all other cannabinoids. All cannabinoids in the plant are made as acids. THC acid does not make you high. You have to decarboxylate it first, so bake it or smoke it. So if you make a smoothie, you won't get high. Okay, so a few other things if you're into chemistry. Bit of misunderstanding about the chemistry, but because of time we jump forward. If you go to a dispensary, someone will tell you, or you might even know, that indica does this and sativa does that, or that this strain is what helps you, and it's all bullshit. Because when our salesperson drives up to LA and hears that Blue Diamond doesn't sell well, he names it Blue Champagne and sells it. And if it doesn't move in the shelf for Blue Champagne, they call it cookies, and it goes. Also, the genetics are not stable. If you have the same genetics, or you take a clone, you grow it indoor, you grow it outdoor, you will have a different molecular profile. Even if you grow it again in the same condition indoors, you will still have difference. Somehow they seem to be season dependent indoors. We have no idea why. So if we start thinking not about strains but about chemovars, so the chemical profile, that might give us a better indication. So if we look at the CBD to THC ratio, we see California has grown it all to be high in THC. Then there's a grouping in the low THC and high CBD ratio and a 1-to-1. It seems genetically not possible for the plant to make anything in between. So a 3-to-1 is somewhat mixed with other constituents or isolates added to something. So that's not a strain up per se. So then you can do further analysis of the chemical profile and you can come up with some grouping, but again, this is all based on the low targets that we can actually look at. We can look at 10 cannabinoids and 50 terpenes, and we are missing 1,000 other compounds. So we're running in large problems here. Then why is it all interesting to us? The endocannabinoid system in the human actually uses those molecules, the anandamine and 2-AG. They are made by the body, they bind to your receptors, and they give you the effect. And THC, CBD, and the others fit into the same pocket. The pocket looks like this. And this is actually a THC derivative, so this is a CB1 receptor that sits on the surface of your nerve cells in the brain and gives you the wanted effects and plays part in your brain assumptions. And then there's a CB2 receptor that sits mainly in the guts, and cannabinoids keep on binding to all other receptors that are found, and it's ongoing research. Then medical effects, we know only very little because you can't do much studies on it, but chronic pain and spasticity, there's moderate quality evidence that it does work, and then we go down the list. Just look at the numbers at the bottom. So 79 trials with a total of 6,500 participants were deemed quality enough to do the evaluation on. And that is out of 23,000 publications. So there's a lot of fluff that is not really helpful. So the other problem is that there is one University of Mississippi, that can grow cannabis federally legal for research purposes. You wait 2 years after you write a grant to get some of the material to do your research on. Problem is the plants that are grown there have nothing to do with the plants that are available on the market. So you're studying a different medication. So that doesn't help either. Then we can only go correlation. And when you look at the death rate of opioid overdose in Colorado, you see an inversion of the trend with the moment that recreational cannabis becomes legal. So that doesn't mean that it does help, it's only correlation. But we see that in every, in over and over again. There was just last week, 2 weeks ago, there was a big buzz in the news that other states have found the same effects. And then, how do you consume? You can have the flower straight up, or you make your oils and concentrates in various forms, and you can do it one way or the other. You can consume it in various ways. And, I just wanted to mention one thing about the death part of cannabis. So far there's not a recorded death from a cannabis overdose, and I can tell you my colleagues try very hard every single day. And with that, I brought up the RIA. There's some further reading, and thank you very much.
Are you two able to stay around after for people to ask questions? That's great, because I know in this group, I happen to know there's some people that are in the industry also, and I do know pretty much everybody here that people are curious, and you thank you. Guys were trying to do time and kept the science short, but we have some very curious people here, so I know they'd like to talk to you. And don't worry about the time at all, because it was a fascinating subject, and I'm really appreciative to know that, I guess I'm mortified, but to know about Alsinger, and that somebody in high offices in the federal government could just lie outright like that. It's mind-boggling. Very, very disheartening. And also, it's good to know that there's not just red and blue states, but green states now, so that's super cool. We are going to be regaled with a special medley for today by Mr. Paul Svensson.
I, of course, am your musical servant, and I search high and I search low for appropriate music, especially thematic music in this particular slot to follow our speakers. So I dug back into my history, found a few little gems you might enjoy singing with me. Don't bogart that joint, my friend, pass it over to me. Don't bogart that joint, my friend, pass it over to me. This was a delightful song that came from the movie Easy Rider. Some of you may remember that, hopefully not. Don't bogart that joint, my friend, pass it over to me. Oh, sing it out now. Don't bogart that joint, my friend, pass it over to me. Here's the verse. Roll another one, just like the other one. You've been hanging on to it. I sure would like a hit. Don't bogart that joint, my friend, pass it over to me. Joint, my friend, pass it over to me. la la, ba-da-bum. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do. I was gonna clean my room, but then I got high. Was gonna get up and find the broom, but then I got high. My room is still messed up, and I know why. Because I got high, because I got high, because I got high. Sing that last 3 lines. Because I got high, because I got high, because I got high. Well, I was gonna go to class before I got high. I could have cheated, I could have passed, then I got high. I'm taking it next semester, I know why. Because I got high, because I got high, because I got high. Sing that again with me. Because I got high, because I got high, because I got high. Oh, and I was gonna go to work, then I got high. I just got a new promotion, but then I got high. Now I'm selling dope, and I know why. Because I got high, because I got high, because I got high. Oh, sing it again. Because I got high, because I got high, because I got high. There was a bunch of lists on the internet of the best pot songs. This one is always at the top of all of those lists. Well, I stone you when you're trying to be so good. Do your best, Bob Dylan. They'll stone you and like they said they would. Yeah, they'll stone you when you're trying to go home. And they'll stone you when you live all alone. But I would not feel so all alone. Everybody must get stoned. Well, they stone you when you're walking down the street. They stone you when you're trying to keep your seat. And they stone you when you're walking on the floor. And they stone you when you're walking to the door. Everybody. But I would not feel so all alone. Let me hear you. Everybody must get stoned. Well, they stone you when you're at the breakfast table. They stone you when you are young and able. Yeah, they'll stone you when you're trying to make a buck. And they'll stone you and then they'll say good luck. I would not feel so all alone. Everybody must get stoned. No, I would not feel so all alone. Come on now. Everybody must get stoned. Roll. Just like the other one. This one's getting near the end. So come on, be a real friend.
Mr. Paul Svensson. That is excellent. Thank you so much, Paul. So we do this thing in Sunday Assembly we call the personal moment, and this could be any story out of your life. We'd like to hear from you, so if you're interested in doing that, please check in with one of the organizers. Everybody's got a story to tell, and we'd appreciate to hear yours. It could be funny, it could be heartbreaking, it could be anything you want it to be, and if you don't want to do it yourself, we'd be happy to have somebody read it for you. Today we have a personal moment from... excuse me, let me get this here. Oh dear. Our theme for today is cannabis, and I'll do this here in a second. Thanks, appreciate that. Thank you kindly, that ought to work, huh? Oh dear, stalling for time. Our theme for today is cannabis, and just yesterday there was the March for Science, and next weekend is Earth Fair. So right here in this, say on the docket, is two of my favorite things, cannabis and science. Science is probably up in my top 5, I'd have to say, because it's just been a part of my life, my whole life, and I've always been interested in it. And cannabis, I'd put maybe top 20 because, you know, I certainly put a piece of pecan pie ahead of cannabis, but that's just me. You know, science has been a part of my life even since I was a little child, just trying to understand wind or rain, lightning, rainbows, earthquakes, the ocean. And when I was in 2nd grade, it was kind of cemented for me because my father got me this magnet. I don't know where he got it. It was this magnet was about this size with a hole in the middle. It was like donut shaped. It was about this thick. It was this huge, very powerful magnet. If you put, you know, an 8-year-old me trying to take it off of metal, it was just like a struggle. And we kids would take it in the sand and we rode it around. We get these little filings out of the sand and we brush that off onto a piece of paper. And then on the paper, we put the magnet under and we make the filings dance around. It was amazing and mysterious. And we'd take opposite charged magnets and we'd push them away. And this invisible force was pushing these things away. So I've just always loved science. And as I got older, and we grew up in the age of seeing the men walk on the moon for the first time. And it wasn't just amazing that we saw a man walk on the moon, but we were watching it on television live while it was happening. That was an amazing thing in 1969. And when I became a teenager, and my friends and I, who were, according to our theme today, users of said product in the mid-1970s, I heard it said that many people did at that time. We would have these large, long discussions, and they were always science-based, almost always science-based discussions. And this would happen in Greg's mother's garage or out in the backyard or maybe in the golf course in the middle of the night. And we would talk about whether there is life on other planets, extraterrestrial life, and we talked about infinity endlessly. That's what I did there. But one thing we talked about a lot was time, this concept of time. And what is it real? What is it? I mean, you only have the present. What is time? And it's this one thing, as I became a sober adult, that I've spent probably the most time thinking about or working on, because I know my experience of time is only in the present. And again in the present, and again in the present. And I started really putting my mind to this, and I'm thinking, well, if I travel from one spot to another spot, I've traveled a distance, but I've also traveled through time to get there. So these things must be linked, I thought. So, you know, in the age of Google, I've done my research, and of course, there's people who've been working on this for a very long time, and there's this thing called space-time, which is a mathematical model which combines space and time into one idea, which is called a continuum, and this continuum has helped the cosmology to understand the universe in a larger sense, in galaxies, and in a smaller sense, in atoms, in a way that they never could before. And time is, I think of my present self and my future self. And now I'm trying to focus on being present in the moment, especially when I'm having conversations with people. I put what just happened aside and what I have to do aside and just take that moment. And when I do that, time is like compressed for me, because I know when my son was born, that moment where he was put on in his crook of his mother's arm and he looked at her for the first time, that's just like it happened this morning. It's just so fresh in my mind, that moment. And so I try to create those moments where things are a little more present. And I always try to think about future Stephen. And that's what I try to do, the things that I'm doing today so that my life will be a little bit better, or taking care of myself so that I could, you know, live to be 100 years and die on my birthday, June 30th, 2060. That's my goal. But, you know, I think of it as like packing for a trip. You pack everything in the bag, and then your future self goes on this vacation, and you unpack stuff, and you have everything you need, and you go, good job, you past self. I really appreciate that. And I haven't always done this. I was an alcoholic for years and years and years, and present me would have a really good time and leave future me in the dust every morning, tired of being tired and sick of being sick. And then that same self in the present would do the same thing to his future self too. So I've really tried not to do that. And I figured that since the theme is cannabis, this would be a good time for us to take a trip together. I just really resumed my car here so that I could travel through time. This is 50 years now, so let's get in here. And then, now I'm not new to this, so I just have to start this, use this cheat sheet here. So See, get that. And then these toggle switches right here, get those there. Gotta get the activator there and the button there. And the flumostat, that's that thing right there. Get that and get those going. And the timer. And this is 12 and a half years, 12 and a half years, 12 and a half years, 12 and a half years. So there we go. Hold on, everybody. This is going to be a wild ride. Get ready. Here we go. Oh, I forgot. I installed the your favorite animal sound kill switch. All right, here we go. Hang on, everybody. It's going to be quick. We're here. 50 years is not very long in the scope of time. So here we are, 50 years in the... Oh, dear. I'm afraid I may have erred, actually, because there's a phone booth over there, and that is a mailbox. Right here's a vending machine for a newspaper. It's a dime. So I'm sorry, this is... Yeah, April 15th, 1968. I'm really sorry about that. I guess I've been more specific when I told him I'm going to travel 50 years. I kind of failed on that one. But I don't need to get a newspaper here because I've been here before. I know that this is the year that Zotz, the candy, was invented with the Fizzy Center. And also a company called Intel started their semiconductor business this year. I know that just a couple of weeks ago, Martin Luther King Jr. gave this brilliant speech, just this inspirational speech about getting to the mountaintop and how the races could live together in harmony. And I know that just the day after that he was killed. He was shot to death at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. And the next day, Bobby Kennedy, he's the brother of the President John F. Kennedy, who made an impassioned speech for people, for cooler heads to prevail, but it didn't help. I mean, all over the last couple of weeks, there's just been riots all over the United States, riots, and people are being killed. Right now, the Vietnam War rages on, and there's protests everywhere in the United States right now. And every night on the news, we watch Walter Cronkite, and he puts the death toll up from the Vietnam War, and we're seeing tens, dozens, hundreds of people dying every day in this war. And there's protests everywhere. I know that in just 8 days, Columbia University will be shut down from protests from the Vietnam War. And I know that 50 days from now, Bobby Kennedy too will be shot to death. I feel silly standing here right now because I know that next year I'm going to put a poster up on my wall that says 1984 because I just finished the book. And I thought, what will that future world be like? In the year 2000, I mean, they're telling us here in school today that in the year 2000, the population will have exploded so much that we'll have used up all the Earth's resources, and that the sky will be even worse than it is today unless people take action. And some people did. Because I can tell you in 2018, the air in Southern California is much, much better than it was in 1968. And I know that the people in 2018 have to think about the future people, their future selves. So what can the future selves do in 2018 for their future selves? We can check in with our family and friends. That's what we can do. We can reconnect with people we haven't talked to for a long time. We can find our community. We can drink more water, rest as much as we can, and help when we can. And there's a couple things that we could do that is sometimes hard for people. One is ask for help. That's a difficult one sometimes. And I know, I will tell you, I'm a really very non-judgmental person. I would be honored if anybody asked me for help. I would be willing to help to the best of my ability. And I know that in this room and in the world, as in 1968, there's so many good people. And people want to help, but we may not know unless we're asked what we can do. And the other thing is that's sometimes difficult, especially in 1968 is probably the most tumultuous time in American history until about 50 years from now. And the one thing that we can really do is find a way to have fun. And that's a difficult thing to do sometimes. Find a way to have fun. And I don't want to monkey with anything here in 1968. I certainly don't want to take a chance that my son won't be born, so I think we should all head back right now. Well, why don't you guys go on ahead, because I lost that magnet in 1968. I'm going to see if I can find it. So, thanks. And now we'll take 1 minute, please, for a minute of silence. Thank you. One thing I've done as part of my meditation practice is close my eyes and just pay attention to my breathing, and I listen to the sounds around me and the world, and I try to place where they are. It's just so nice to hear people, kids, and people talking in the background. Sunday Assembly is a not-for-profit organization and run entirely by a lot of hardworking volunteers. If you want to volunteer, we'd love to have your help. But there's a cost to getting this thing going, so we do appreciate your donations in any amount. We don't pass the hat like a lot of assemblies do, but if you do a recurring donation, that's where we sustains most of us, pays for this place and the events that we do. So some announcements today. What's coming up? First one is feedback.
Hi, my name is Lynn, and I'm the one that put a form inside everybody's program today, soliciting feedback, suggestions, ideas, and it's kind of a long form, so if you want to take it home and bring it back, that's okay. But please do take time to provide us with your ideas. We really do want to know what you're thinking, what you'd like to see happening.
So next year we'll have a booth at Earth Fair, and also like, oh, I'm sorry, next week. Yeah, a week from today. I'm still somewhere. I guess I didn't make it all the way back. I'm sorry. So next we will have a booth at Earth Fair, and we would love to have you help us talk to other people that stop by and tell them about Sunday Assembly, your experience at Sunday Assembly. Last year we started to do leave a button, take a button, sew a button. So if you have any buttons that you don't use from the clothes that you buy, you can bring them, and then we try to give them to people that need that specific kind of button. And we also do an activity to teach people and kids, to teach adults and kids how to sew a button, because a lot of people never were able to learn that skill. So we try to do that as part of the effort to reuse. And we are going to meet at 1:30 at Piecraft to talk a bit about volunteers for Earth Fair. But you can also sign up, leave us your email, and we'll let you know how you can help. Oh, so we are going to be in Area 6, and this year we have Section 650 and 651. So we're across the street from the Oregon Pavilion parking lot. Will be easy to find, but that would be good to have as a reference if you are having a hard time finding us. Area 6, Section 650 and 651. Thanks. And we're going to have our usual summer solstice / Father's Day bonfire, picnic and jam session. Bring your instruments, except drums, because the city permit does not allow for drums. But any other instrument is okay. And we have a shelter already reserved for that event, and we'll have a fire pit that is close by. Thank you.
In the middle of July, we will be, marching in the Pride Parade. There'll be lots of unicorns, rainbows, glitter everywhere. It's amazing. We have lots of fun. We're looking also, though, to do something new this year, and not just march in the Pride Parade, but have a booth at the Pride Festival, so we can have some, contact with other people that are our audience. But in order to do that, we need all of your help. So if you'd like to help us out this year, either just to come march, sing a song, be silly, wear a unicorn hat, come sign up on the back. We have a little sheet there and a column listed for Pride. And just put down your contact information and we'll get in touch with you in ways that you can help make this Pride the sparkliest one we've had yet. Thank you.
All right. One last song for Mr. Paul Swenson. One thing I do love about Sunday Assembly, whether you can sing or not, you can sing out loud. I'm definitely going to turn my microphone off because I can't sing. Paul, take it away.
Let's all stand up and sing the #1 most requested song at karaoke bars. Here we go. Where it began, I can't begin to know, but then I know it's growing strong. I started off low because it gets high. Was in the spring, and spring became the summer. Who'd have believed you'd come along? Hands, touching hands, reaching out, touching me, touching you. Here we go. Sweet Caroline. Good times never seem so good. I've been inclined to believe they never would, but now I look at the night and it don't seem so lonely. We fill it up with only two. And when I hurt runs off my shoulders. How can I hurt when holding you? Warm, touching warm, reaching out, touching me, touching you. Come on now, sweet Caroline. Ba, ba, ba. Good times never seem so good. I've been inclined to believe they never would. Now I got to tell you something here. So there's this little thing. Somewhere there's a guitar part. There it is. So I went and learned that. The first time we did this song, I really, really worked on it so I could play that little riff. And everybody's going, bum, bum, bum. So I realized I don't need to do it, but you do have to sing it loud, otherwise I'll look like an idiot. No, 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 sweet Caroline. Come on! Bum, bum, bum. Good times never seem so good. So good, so good. I've been inclined to believe they never would. Sweet Caroline. Good times never seem so good. Sweet Caroline. All right, good singing, everybody.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. That's it for the Sunday Assembly. Coffee, teas, and snacks, and community. And just so you know, we'll be meeting after that at Pie Craft, formerly known as Pizzicato, just down the street and on 4th Avenue, right that way. Check with someone else. Thank you very much. We'll see you third Sunday of the month at 11 a.m.